served our country as a U.S. Navy officer, and you worked at the highest levels, having the honor of being commanding officer, a special assistant to Chief of Naval Operations, and the aide to the nation's highest ranking military officer, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Along the way, you earned a master's degree in national security affairs, and for 20 years really did most things very much by the book. From senior military officer, you went on to become a mystic, a medium, and a messenger of hope. And we are going to talk about your incredible journey. Suzanne, welcome to the Soul Collective podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Emily. I just love sharing the messages of hope with everybody. So thanks for the opportunity to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, I want to dive in and just talk about your life in the military and in such a high-ranking position. You were actually there for 9/11. What was your experience?
Wow. I just remember that as the most beautiful day, bright blue sky. It was an exciting day because as the aide to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, we were heading out to Europe. My boss, the general, was going to be knighted that week by Queen Elizabeth, and I was going to be there beside him when it happened. I mean, it was a dream job. And off we went in our aircraft, and we were about a few hours out over the Atlantic when we got news that a small plane had crashed into the Twin Towers. And of course, everything unfolded after that, and we found out it was far worse than what anybody thought. And by the time the chairman told me to have the pilot take us back to Washington, every other aircraft had been grounded, and we were escorted back by fighter jets so that nobody would shoot us down, landed back at Andrews Air Force Base. We're escorted by this police motorcade back to the Pentagon with smoke coming out of the roof. We had just left it a few hours earlier. After the general had a briefing, we started going through the center of the darkened Pentagon with the smoky hallways, and then came to our senses and went outside. I was stepping over jet engine pieces in the grass, just thinking, what has happened? And knowing that life would never again be the same, and staring at that gaping hole in our office building, that was the moment in my life when I really started asking the deep questions, like, what is this life all about? And look at these, there were people right there hours earlier. Why are some people in the wrong place at the wrong time? And so that was a pivotal day for many of us.
It sure was. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious, before that time, did you have sort of a curiosity or a fascination with the spirit world?
I did. My whole life I've been interested in this. In fact, it was really funny. I remember a lieutenant commander in the Navy, and with my husband, playing along with me, I'd say, Ty, I want to try astral travel. Hide this envelope somewhere in the house and see if I can see what's in it. You know, these kind of things. But I didn't talk about that with my military colleagues. But nothing ever came of it. I didn't do any astral travel. I never saw spirits. But now I know why the fascination was there. It was just the start of what was coming, but I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, so you kind of made this transition. You spent 20 years as a high-ranking military officer, and then you and your husband set seas on this incredible journey across the country, or across the world.
Yeah, it was supposed to be around the world on our sailboat, but we crossed the Atlantic Ocean. We were actually most of the way through the Mediterranean, and this was how long after? 5 years after 9/11. I retired because of 9/11. As soon as I was eligible, a couple years later, I retired because we'd had this dream of going sailing, living the cruising life, and it was idyllic. But you see, I wasn't furthering my soul's growth at the time. I was, there's nothing wrong with enjoying yourself and living dreams, but clearly there was a mission for my soul, and it's to do this work now. And so it took a major wake-up call. It was like the spirit world said, okay, 9/11 didn't do it for you. Now we're going to get personal. And unfortunately, we were off the coast of Croatia and found out that my stepdaughter, Susan, 27 years old and a Marine, a sergeant in the Marine Corps, was struck and killed by lightning. And we came home right away. And that's when I could no longer not really dive into, is there an afterlife? Because I know you could not kill Susan's vibrant spirit. And that's what started everything, my searching and my finding a greater reality.
Hmm. And i- you had a really prophetic dream just days before her passing.
Yeah, you've done your research. That's great. It I didn't know anything about prophetic dreams, so I didn't realize at the time that it was a bit of a sign. But Susan, who I rarely dreamed about, came to me and she walked right up to me. I can still see it to this day, and that's how you know it's a soul visit. And she looked me in the face and she smiled and she said, "The baby and I are fine. Don't worry about us." Susan was 6 months pregnant when she was killed. And so I remember at the time I said, "Hey, Ty, we should probably reach out to Susan. We haven't heard from her in a while." And so he emailed her, but we didn't hear back before she was killed. And I know now, I've heard it from so many souls that I've connected with across the veil, that the soul knows when its time has come. And she was just coming to the one person she knew would notice that message, even if it was in retrospect.
Mm. And it seems like that really set off this yearning to want to connect with her on a deeper level, and sort of this quest of knowledge and kind of, understanding what else is out there.
Oh yeah, but once I saw her body in the coffin, I know it's a little graphic, but that was this point where I knew there's more. That's when you look at that body and say, that really is just a vessel. So where's the spirit? And if there are these people called mediums who can connect with those who have crossed, well, then I'm going to connect with Susan. And I began meditating that week, Emily. And it's now 14 years later. And maybe I've missed 14 days of meditation, but I doubt it. It is my sacred time every day, because that's what changed my life. And that's what I teach people, that if you just dedicate yourself to sitting quietly and asking questions like, is there more? Who am I? And asking to connect with higher aspects of consciousness, your efforts are rewarded.
Yeah, it must be partly that, military discipline that has allowed you to really cultivate such a deep, practice. You've written 13 books, you travel all over the world, and, speak so much, and are such a wonderful teacher.
Yeah, but let me just correct something there. Absolutely, the military discipline allows me to do this work so energetically and so committed and all that. But let's say dedicated. I'm committed to the spirit world. It's the life-changing effects of that meditative practice. It's the bliss and the connection that result from it, that you just, once you feel it, you don't want to miss it. So that doesn't take commitment. That's just, boy, if you go a couple days without that, you get so drawn back into the human drama. Who needs that?
Yes, that's so true. And it actually feeds into my next question, which is like, really, with the military, you have sort of like this left brain, logical, analytical way of thinking. And how has that, shifted for you over time?
That has been the greatest challenge for me, to overcome that. It's a blessing and it's great to be balanced, but I was so far left brain that I've had to pray and work on and be aware of this right brain side. Pray for more right brain access. I even had 2 days of therapy and balancing the hemispheres. I do everything I can to get more into the right brain. And now I've reached a really nice place of balance, and anybody can do that. You just have to be aware of what aspect of your brain is dominating at the time. There are times when we need to be left brain, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I really want to dive into that and ask you more, because it's this faith that I observe in you of, really not doubting or questioning the visions and the symbols that you receive.
It's so much more than faith, Emily. It's knowing. Because of the left brain, I've learned that if you ask for evidence and validation from any aspect of higher consciousness that makes its presence known to you, they will give it to you in the most magical, wondrous, beautiful, fun ways. And it becomes almost like a game. I call it the sign game. Okay, I know this is you, whoever's talking. Now I want you to give me a sign in the next couple days. And I want this specific sign. And you get it. And it's like, wow. In fact, my poor husband, so many times I'll go, and because one of my signs has just showed up magically, something I just asked for. He's gotten to the point where he doesn't even go, like what anymore, because he just knows it's just the latest sign.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I love about listening to your stories is that you really are so evidence-based and you have story after story
Oh yeah.
of really, really magical, signs and knowing.
If I don't want to take you too far off track here, but I'm in my RV because we're traveling around the country as we do every summer. And we had a couple here the other day, and he said, well, I'm just a total skeptic. And I said, okay, let me just share a little bit of evidence. And I went and I told a few stories, and his eyes get really big because some of these stories, and that's the only way we share information is through stories, but it doesn't mean they're not true. Some of these stories are so undeniably evidential, the brain doesn't know how to process it. So unless I'm an outright liar, then what are you going to do with that? You have to say, well, maybe I could open that door a crack and have an experience like that myself.
Yeah, it's funny because I sort of imagine you in this, as you're cultivating your skills, and I think that you are in some type of mediumship school and you get called up to the front of the class and I can only imagine how, maybe nerve-wracking or,
Oh, well, go to YouTube and search Suzanne Giesemann Messages of Hope documentary. We recreated the scene when that exact thing happened. We got the teacher who pulled me to the front of the class. I was only there to write her story. I didn't know I was going to be a medium. And I recreated it, but you'll feel my discomfort. It was very easy to recreate that moment. I wanted the hole to open up in the floor so I could fall through it. Me bring through a spirit? Are you kidding? And then all of a sudden, hearing engineer, cancer, 70 years old, Twinkle Toes, the man's nickname. That's when I got goosebumps even thinking about it now. That's when you say, wait a minute, you mean there really is somebody here? And then the rest is history.
yeah. And so when you said Twinkle Toes, what happened? What was the reaction
Oh, well,
in
there's
the,
this woman in the class. She already said my dad was 70 and died of cancer, and he was an engineer. And the teacher's the one that was Janet Nohavik. She pushed me and said, get some more information. And I said, well, I see a pair of black patent leather shoes and I hear Twinkle Toes. And the girl says, oh, yeah, my dad was a ballroom dancer, and that's what my mom always called him. Then you go, how did that happen? And I just had to know. And I started researching quantum physics and telepathy. And I said, this is real. This makes sense. This is not woo woo. This is science. This is frequency and information. And boy, oh boy, there's no limit to what we can tap into. Isn't that awesome?
it is. Yeah. I would love to dive into some more stories, but I'm curious, what was your husband's Ty's reaction in the beginning to all of this?
Well, when I said earlier, either I'm making it all up, either I'm lying. Well, he knows that I don't fantasize about things. I don't make things up. He knows I'm just like this. And so that first moment with the Twinkle Toes, I get him on the phone. Ty, you won't believe what happened. And every single connection since then, every time I come out of a reading in the other room here or at home, and I say, look at what came through. The spirit world showed me this, and I connected with the son who told me this, and I connected with the mother who told me that. Can't deny it. And he's a total believer now. You cannot deny it with the preponderance of the evidence. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you believe that your soul sort of chose this contract of,
I know it did. I
yeah,
know it did. I mean, I wasn't just a Navy commander. I was the aide to the head of the military, and everything that I've done has just somehow ended up at this level that allows people to say, well, she's really not woo-woo. Maybe I can trust her. Maybe I can believe her. And so people who want to believe, their soul is nudging them, come on, it's time for you to wake up. They see me and they say, well, okay, I guess I can believe. Because we're all worried about what other people will think, or they'll think we're crazy. You got to get over that.
Yeah, totally. It really does bring it more into the mainstream. And there's this fabulous scene in your documentary where you're sitting at dinner with a ranger high up, military uh, colleague, and
Yeah.
you're telling him what you're up to, right, in the world right now. How did that conversation go?
Oh, it was so awkward because that was going back to my military days. I knew that we were both in that same mindset. I could hear in his mind what he was going to think when I said I now talk to people who have died. And he did. He was like mid bite, and he stopped and he reached down. And this is a fast moving businessman now, CEO of his own company. He turned off his phone because he wanted to hear more. And I was just, oh, thank you, God. Now, let me tell you about this. And I usually don't care what other people think, but he was going to help finance these booklets I was going to give out at hospices, and I needed his donation for that. And so, otherwise, if people don't believe, that's okay. That's their path. But in that case, it was really cool that he said, well, I know you and I know your character, and so I'm ready to listen. And that was a gift.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It really is. And I kind of liken it to my own journey of going from, corporate America to the work that I'm doing now in the world, is kind of like peeling back the layers and sort of,
And you know what? I bet you couldn't not do this work, could you?
no.
Right. That's the test of when you're on the track for your soul's purpose.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so true. How have you changed as a person?
I love everybody. I understand people who are challenging to love. I understand that their soul is trying so hard to get them to wake up and they just don't realize who they are. So to get to the point where I'm not knocked off balance by the news and by what's going on, even when people are clashing, I'm still not real comfortable with conflict. And so, but in that sense, I'm so aware of what I still need to work on. But I'm also so peaceful these days and very seldom knocked off balance. And if I am knocked off balance, I come back into balance very quickly. Have so many tools, and that's what I love to share with people if they want them.
Hmm. Do
Yeah.
you believe that everybody can sort of cut through the BS, if you will, and connect with the spirit realm?
Well, my definition of BS is belief system. And that's what's holding us back from connecting with the spirit world. If you don't believe it's there, you won't access it. I won't do a reading for a hardcore skeptic, because they get what their soul is ready for, which is, when their soul's always ready, they get what their human side's ready for. Nothing when they're blocked off. But if you just open that door a little and say, I'll be open-minded, then anybody can access this information.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What were some of the biggest tools for you to deepen that practice?
Well, it's that daily sitting in the silence, and on my website is on the gifts page is my 7 steps to connect. And I realized I follow this little process that's not rigid. It's actually kind of flowy, and it takes people to a nice expanded state very quickly. So it was the belief, and then aligning myself with that beautiful, loving essence that I feel when I meditate in every moment. So that's really key. Is what I mean by aligning? Well, we're tapping into love. So if we're not being the expression of love, how are you going to bring that into phase? How are you going to connect with that field? So aligning with that, and then learning that we don't shift to some far off reality. We shift our focus to what's right here, just a different channel, realizing that we are an antenna here in this body, and learning how to fine tune the antenna and shift to different channels to connect with higher consciousness. It's just amazing what is available to us right here, right now. Yeah.
Mm. What was that like for you in the beginning? Were there, parts of you that were kind of doubting the experience that you were having, or did you really kind of have this inner knowing of this is all,
Well,
really?
one of the greatest leaps for me has been to do channeling work and bring through a group of guides who told me to call them Sanaya. That was a big leap for me, because to have other people sit with me and I get out of the way, close my eyes, and these different voices come through with fluency and wisdom that's beyond my pay grade. it's it was challenging, but to have my husband sit there and say, "That's not you, Suzanne," validates it, what my heart already knows. The thing is that when things come through our own consciousness, it's so obvious to us that we feel that often we're making these things up, but it's only because there's such a complete blending of consciousness. So again, the spirit world, if you ask for evidence, will just seamlessly knit that into the things they share with you and finally take away the doubt. But learning to trust the process and the unfolding, that's the biggest challenge.
Why was poetry so significant of a way to communicate with you?
Gosh, this was probably 2009. I was told, sit in the silence, have pen and paper nearby, and write down what you hear in meditation. So I would write these, one or two beautiful sentences, and I'd think, well, I'm making that up. Anybody could say that. And so one day my finger twitched on its own. So I picked up the pen, and I had asked a question about learning to trust, and a question about overcoming judging others back in 2009. And all of a sudden I was receiving answers to those exact two questions. And I thought, well, okay, I asked those questions. This could be coming from my own consciousness. And then I realized, wait a minute, these lines that I'm writing are rhyming. And they went on rhyming perfectly. 3 full pages. I kept my eyes closed. I could feel the edge of the page. I'd turn the page. By the time it finished, I was sobbing, because this was a full 3-page poem with perfect stanzas, with rhythm and rhyme that answered the question, that talked about the work I'm here to do. And I knew I could not have written that in 5 minutes. And my husband heard me and he says, "What's the matter? Why are you crying?" And I said, "I think I just wrote a poem." And he said, "What do you mean you think you did?" And I said, "Let me read this to you." And my retired destroyer captain husband started crying too, because he knew me and he knew I was no poet. And that showed me the brilliance of higher consciousness. She's not going to believe us. We got to do something different. We're going to send her poetry, And they sent me poetry every day for a year, until finally it was like, do you get it? It's not you. It's partly you. It'll always be partly you, but it's a cooperative engagement when we communicate through you. And so every day since, there are now about 4,000 daily messages on my website and at dailyway.org of these beautiful wisdom and inspiration and loving messages for all of us from Sanaya.
Yes, such beautiful wisdom that is coming through you and a part of you, and that you're sharing. I'm Suzanne, I'm so curious. You have countless stories, but what are some of your favorite stories?
I'm going to share one tomorrow night. I do monthly mentoring webinars. My guides teach me all the time. They use me as like the guinea pig. Whatever's going on in my life, they show me how to overcome it. And then I share that teaching with people in monthly webinars. And tomorrow night, I've dug up an old story from one of my readings that I just love. I brought through a woman's husband. We were clearly set up by him, in that one of my Daily Way postings had this picture of 2 trees hugging each other with light shining through the middle of it. That woman had just taken an identical picture, and her daughter even said, "Look, Mom, it looks like the trees are hugging." She sent it to me, and when I see something like that, I know that's pay attention to this similarity. And it turns out she had a husband across the veil. I said, let's connect with him. He came through and he told me evidence about a garage with paintings in it. And he talked about different things going on in her life. And she said, "I don't know anything about a garage with paintings in it." He gave me a name that she was supposed to pay attention to. Well, do you know that I don't know how much later it was, not much more than a week or two. She went out with this man whose wife had passed. And he said, let me show you, my wife was an artist. All of her paintings are here in the garage. And that was
Wow.
the paintings in the garage. That couple ended up getting married. They were set up by their spouses in spirit. And all there's so
Oh.
much more to that story, but this, I got goosebumps, you too. There's
Yeah.
so many stories like that that show you that we're part of this web. It's not this static world that we don't interact with. Our loved ones are helping us all the time. My
Mm,
book, Wolf's Message, is one of the most phenomenal stories of all, about a soul who absolutely let his human side know he was going to pass the next day. And it's a absolute no other explanation, NOE, story of the web that we're part of across the veil.
mm. It's so beautiful to know, and it must be so, so comforting to know that it's, we can connect, and there are, you know, um, messages from the other side on a daily basis that we can tap into when we open our heart and tune into them. And one of the things that I'm really curious about is sort of like this sign language or symbolism that you get,
Yeah.
and how you were able to decipher that and really like tune into.
Oh, well, all of us have guides. They've been with us for life, but we also have specific purpose guides. So now that I'm a medium, I have my mediumship guide. So in a reading, if I'm doing a reading and I see, I like charades is how my readings go. I feel like the spirits I connect with literally sit with me as me. And so I see my own hands in my own mind's eye. And for instance, I'd see my own hand going like this on my own arm. Well, the first time that happened, I said, well, I feel your loved one's trying to tell me they had a tattoo here on their upper arm. The person says, yes, they did. So you just, in the moment, say silently to the mediumship guide, next time we have somebody who comes through with a tattoo, do that sign. That's shorthand. Now I know what it is. And so that worked. Recently, if I see this motion, well, that means the person sewed, but that could be anything. And so in a recent reading, I saw a zipper after that. Now, I know from my mom's sewing, if you can put a zipper in, you're a really good seamstress, not just somebody that fixes holes in socks like me. And so I said, I feel that your mother, who's showing me the zipper, was an actual seamstress. Yes, she was a seamstress. So I said to my guide, that's a good symbol for seamstress. The very next reading, I saw the zipper and I said, I believe that your sister's trying to show me she was a seamstress. Yes, she was. I mean, it just becomes shorthand. And so I've done so many readings now. I've talked to thousands of souls that this is how I understand it. My mediumship guide gives them a briefing beforehand. Look, you're going to work with Suzanne as the medium. These are her symbols. Let's see. You passed suddenly, so we're going to go like that. And you fell before you passed, so we're going to go like that. We're going to make her heart palpitate because you passed from a heart attack, so that's going to be easy. And we're going to, let's see, rub your feet because you had neuropathy. And it just, this whole library of symbols makes the reading go like that, and it's very easy. Then we always hope for those little gold nuggets that are different, that specifically apply to that person, like show her the toothpick hanging out of your mouth, then they'll really know it's you, that kind of thing. it's
Hmm.
it's just awesome.
Yeah. Did you always have these sort of intuitive gifts or, empathy, compassion when you were growing up, or is it something that you really cultivated over time?
No, I didn't. I mean, I hope that I was always a nice person, but I think I was pretty normal. I don't know how other people feel. I judged people like we all do. I try not to do that anymore. But intuitive gifts, I would not have recognized it as such. However, it must have been part of me, because that's why the chairman of the Joint Chiefs asked me to be his aide. They didn't do a selection process. He said, will you be my aide? Because he had seen me working as his protocol officer, and I was always one step ahead. I knew what he needed before he asked for it. Now, is that just good planning, or is that intuition? Maybe a little of both.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What is the difference between mediumship and channeling?
Mediumship is connecting directly with someone who used to be in physical form and talking with them and communicating their messages and their evidence to a loved one here to show that they're right here, communicating for them. A medium is in the middle. Channeling is a form of mediumship in that we're connecting to higher beings, but there's no back and forth with a sitter, a recipient here. It's just solid stream talking, being the voice and hands and expression of those in the spirit world. So sometimes if a connection in a reading is really good, you can channel for short periods of time. But
Mm,
usually a channeling session is dedicated and it's just nonstop communication. I
yeah.
remember, well, I'll share you a little with you a little story of when I was uh, doing a reading for a couple on using the internet, and they were on the screen and I'm looking at them, but I was bringing through their son and we blended so perfectly that I took on his mannerisms like this. And I said, he says to you, well, you know, you, Suzanne, you went to college and you may like people with a degree. I didn't need that degree. I was real happy to just hang out with my bros. And I was doing that and talking like that. And I looked up and his parents are wide-eyed. His dad goes like this and goes, oh my God. Because it was like they were looking at their son, and they were. It was just
Wow.
magical. That's channeling, but not the true sense of what I did for a large group last night when I let Sanaya speak through me.
Hmm.
Okay.
And what about drop-ins? Do you get those at all?
I do, and I'm telling the spirit world right now, I would like that more often, please, because I love the drop-ins. That's when I don't expect the spirit to show up and suddenly it's so obvious there's somebody here. But it's almost always for me, someone who I've already met across the veil and I recognize. If I'm with a friend and like my neighbor and friend whose daughter passed, and her daughter will drop in on me, it's just very obvious. Oh, your daughter's here. What do you have to say? Boom.
Hmm.
But you know, I think the spirit world shuts off that ability in me, or they know me. I would want to be giving messages to everybody all the time, and that's not healthy. You got to have boundaries.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I love how your guides shared with you that, raising consciousness is almost like this spiral effect, which is such a beautiful image. And I find that to be such the case. It's not in a linear fashion, right?
Oh no! And if you our evolution of a soul is ever onward, ever upward, an expanding spiral. And if you miss something this time around, if you don't pick up a major point, well, then you pick it up this time around. And then here's the point I missed down below here, which is what's so exciting. There is no end. There is no ultimate awakening or ultimate enlightenment. We are source having experiences through us. And so there's limitless growth to all of us. And as a medium, that's really exciting because it's always going to get better and better and clearer connection and more love for all of us. So we should all wake up excited, huh? If we don't, then we just say, hey, what do I need to learn today?
Yeah. Well, I love that about you because you just have this excitement and enthusiasm, and it seems like, almost, inability to become exhausted from all of this, working and
Well, that's why I balance work with play and work out every day, because it is a big energy drain. But it's funny, I did a huge event last night and I could easily just lie around all day, but fresh air, sunshine, it's so important for all of us. So get out and walk.
Yeah, that is so important. And I love how you brought up balance. What are some of the ways that you really, find balance in your life?
Humor is so important. And I just got this message from Sanaya this morning because I'm a little off balance. Really, I channeled last night for about 900 people, and the energy was so high that I feel the subsequent dip this morning. But I felt myself getting a little manic afterwards because I could feel everybody's energy. And it's becoming aware of that. In fact, a magical moment. Just as I was returning to the RV here from that event, I could feel the mania. And I was going to play this song that sends me even higher. And I was at a red light, so I pushed the button on my phone for that song. It started to play, and then the phone made this funny sound. It went, and on came a Deva Premal song that was calming, soothing, and the mantra was all about take me from the unreal to the real. Om Asatoma is the name of the song. And I went, oh my God, you're trying to show me, don't play that song. Calm down, because there's payback. When you get really high, you crash really low. And it was just like, spirit world's got your back if you pay attention. How did that happen? And I just calmed down. So balance, just there are so many ways to seek it, but it starts with being aware of where you are now.
Yes, yes. You know, you talk a little bit about the dim ages, and I want to, you know, get a sense of what your guides are sharing about this time and where we're at and kind of where we're headed.
Yes. I've met a few people who have actually seen the grid of light around our planet. My guides woke me up one morning and said, stellated dodecahedron. I said, what? I wrote it down. I said, if that is a real thing, this connection is over the top. And it is. It's the Christ consciousness grid around the planet. Call it unity consciousness. It just means that as each one of us comes to know we are consciousness in expression, that's Christ consciousness. It's not a religion. It's just awareness. All is one. As each one of us comes to know that, our light in the grid becomes brighter. And so there are certain places where the grid is not real bright, but it's like a dimmer switch. It's not all or nothing. Each light adds to the whole. That's a beautiful concept, but it's reality. There's this thing called the noosphere. It's a layer of consciousness that is made up of the human mind. And so people often ask my guide, Sanaya, how are we doing? We're not doing so well as mankind. You know, we're hurting each other, and you can read the headlines. And they said, look, you are progressing. That evolution is ongoing. You have progressed from the dark ages, but these are still only the dim ages, which is a little humorous, but not so funny really, right? We have a long way to go, but it is hopeful in that we have we've made some progress. So how do we make more progress? Through shows like yours, Emily, and understanding that each one of us really makes a difference, and turning up our light and trying to understand why others are dim instead of condemning them, and helping them find the true soul inside.
Yes, yeah. And it does seem like we are accelerating, although, you know, sometimes it feels like the progress is slow. But I think that you're absolutely right, is it starts with ourself and our own inner awareness. And something that you shared, I just absolutely loved. And it talked about, you talked about our own inner barometer. And that is the biggest really guide to show us kind of our own energy cannot lie in terms of where we're at.
But fear can, what's the word? Can give you a false positive hold to the body and what it's telling you, that barometer, to take a few nice deep breaths and exhale longer than you inhaled to release the tension first. Then you ask a question or tune into any inner guidance, and it's going to be much more valid than if you don't take that time to get centered first.
Mm. Well, let's talk a little bit about fear, because there is so much fear that is arising, especially right now. You know, we're recording this still in the midst of COVID-19 and the pandemic. And what are your guides sharing with you about this time and how we might be able to navigate it?
They gave the greatest analogy in the channeling session last night of a snowball, that yes, consciousness is picking up speed, but like a snowball that grows bigger and bigger, you get tossed around a bit, right? You got to roll with it. So if we can flow with it and roll with it and realize that good really does come from chaos, but it's an up and down cyclic thing, then we know that this too shall pass. How can I roll with it without getting caught in the fear? Well, the way to do that is to understand that you are not only the story, that this drama is being witnessed by you at a soul level. We go into movie theaters and we get so wrapped up in the story that if it becomes a little intense, what do? Step out into the lobby. The story's still going on.
Mm.
We take a breather. That's what meditation does for us. It allows us to step out of the drama. And if we can do that, if we have the ability to set the story aside, then who are we really? We must be dual natured, human story and soul, the witnessing awareness. When you can find that witnessing awareness and find the peace that's right here, always in the lobby, then fear becomes a choice. That's huge.
Yeah, I love how you describe that. And it really relates to kind of the spiral, because you can see the difference between stepping in and plugging into the media and the drama and the noise, and then stepping back into meditation and, you know, finding that inner awareness. You can see the difference and the energy in your own inner being. At least that has been the case for me. And, you know, plugging back into that, you realize, oh gosh, you know, my fear is rising. I'm, you know, definitely being triggered by what's happening. And so that ability to be able to, you know, deepen your own practice can have such a profound effect.
Yes, and the COVID news is such a perfect example of how each one of us comes here for our own unique view of life and experiences. I was awakened at 3 a.m. and told, get up. And I got up and I started looking at the news, and I went to every news source I could find, and every single one had a different opinion. And so everybody right now says, well, what do I believe? Well, you can tune into your heart and then just flow. But the point of this is that source is experiencing all possibilities. This is how evolution happens, through trial and error. So we try that and you say, how's that working for you? Well, that's not working. So I'm going to try this one. How does fear working for you? That doesn't work at all. How does peace work? Once you find out how to access peace, then you can really choose what to believe, what to tune into, what to set aside until you can make a better choice. Just knowing we are multidimensional beings makes all the difference in the world, but it also allows us to honor each person's uniqueness and viewpoint. That's why we're here.
Yes. You know, you have had such an amazing journey. And, you know, we talked a little bit about sort of a soul contract, or just coming into this world and having this really unique path. Do you believe that everybody has a very unique purpose?
I know we all do, but the number one purpose we all share as souls in human form is to allow the soul to shine, to have experiences, to practice by trial and error. What our true nature is love, connection. My definition of love is absence of separation. That's where we are at the basic level. We are all connected as light, energy, information. That doesn't sound very loving, but that's our basic essence as consciousness. But then we express ourselves in unique ways. And so your calling is what is your passion. You know, what lights your fire? You're doing it now with these beautiful broadcasts, Emily. My passion is clearly sharing with people how to find your true nature. It could be your passion is art or writing or singing, or your uh, your family. It doesn't have to be something that changes the world. Just do what lights your fire.
Mm.
As long as it serves and helps the greater good, then you're really aligned.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And I think, especially coming from you, since you really had a career of checking all the boxes and doing, and, sometimes just the being and doing, like you said, what really, really lights your soul on fire can change the world, because it really is your light and your energy that is radiating through, which is, quite clearly the case with you.
Well, I'm grateful, and I realize that people have to make money and you have to do jobs that may not always be inspiring. So bring your joy and your love and your alignment with your true self into everything you do. And then hopefully you find your passion outside of the job, but it bleeds over into the job. This is the soul's journey is not it doesn't necessarily mean that life is always beautiful. My life is not. I'm enthusiastic and happy because I'm talking about my passion right now, but I have my challenges, and those are all opportunities, and we come here to experience the whole spectrum of experiences. So one of the things that I've learned the hard way is that the emotions that I was never allowed to feel as a kid, like anger, and um, wasn't even allowed to be sick as a kid, feel it fully, and they all flow through. So don't block any experience. Your soul came here to experience it, but if you don't like it, let it flow through if it's not pleasant, and then ask for guidance. Take me to love. Show me how to find contentment, and your prayers will be answered.
Mm. That's really great advice, especially in terms of raising your own frequency vibration. Are there any other sort of practices or tools that you would recommend?
Yes, my guides gave me the greatest phrase. It's called, "Isn't that interesting?" It's the simplest little phrase that takes us instantly to neutral witnessing, the observer of the drama. It works for little things like spilling the milk on the floor to huge things like a car accident or even a death. You just stop and you say, "Isn't that interesting?" Now you're not judging. You're not giving it meaning. In that moment of pause, you have a choice. Am I going to get caught up in the drama, or am I going to step into the lobby and breathe? If I breathe, when I come back into the drama, which will still be there, can I bring peace with me? So isn't that interesting is incredibly powerful. Yeah.
Love that. Suzanne, anything else that the guides would like to share during this time?
The basic awareness that you're not alone. We are not alone. We have helpers at every level of consciousness, and most of it's higher than us. But if you don't know the answers to a question, don't know how to deal with something, you don't need a psychic. It's nice to have a medium and a psychic around, but you have the entire sea of consciousness available to you because you are an expression of that. So knowing that, just remember to breathe, to get centered, and ask a question deliberately, knowing some entity will hear you and answer you. You're not alone, and they love you so much, because our basic essence that unites all of us is love. So ask it deliberately, whatever your challenges is, whatever your challenge is, and be prepared. Buckle your seatbelt. Once you start doing that, the magic happens.
I love that. So
Yeah.
beautiful. Suzanne, it has been amazing connecting with you today. I know that there's years and years wait list to get on your calendar, but there's lots of different ways that people can connect with you, and you have a mentorship program. Where can people go to learn more and get more information about your programs?
Certainly SuzanneGiesemann.com, but scroll down to the bottom. The footer is so full of information, of free gifts that I have on my site, and online classes and in-person classes, lots of videos on YouTube, free meditations. I hope you find something there that is of value and just lifts your heart. That's the goal.
Yes, you have so many amazing, amazing resources, and we will link to those. Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Emily, and all of you for listening.